Immigration protests have begun in Mexico, essentially rioting over the same thing Americans are, except they're on the side of mass deportations, as their version of Antifa appears to wear German symbols. Destroying restaurants while customers cower in fear on the inside. And just like all riots, they eventually turned to looting. In their destructive but mostly peaceful marches. Now the AP did interview some of these activists.
Sus precios y desplazar a los mexicanos.
That roughly translates to anger over foreigners importing their culture, concerned over gentrification and being colonized. Now a lot of their graffiti was profanity and outright threats towards Americans, but others carried signs saying, "Pay taxes, learn the local language, respect our culture, and this is not your home." It's almost like they want the same exact thing the American far-right wants, but for Mexico, as it shouldn't be controversial to request foreigners that want to take residence in the country to learn the local language, where there's massive pushback to force American truckers to learn English, as when driving a semi, reading street signs is kind of important, where we've recently seen places like Japan use language as almost a barrier against foreigners. But then again, Japan has zero chill when it comes to this sort of thing. The point being, it's just interesting how at the same time we're seeing anti-ICE riots over deportations to Mexico, Mexico is seeing pro-deportation riots over immigration from the US. Ironically angry over the same exact thing over completely opposite reasons, as the mass importation of cheap labor depresses wages and increases housing costs, while the importation of wealthy residents causes inflation and increases housing costs. Meanwhile, the only people profiting from these crisis side? I don't know. It's just the wealthy elites that benefit from the disintegration of the middle class. As when you look more into this story, Mexico News Daily covered the protest, stating they're against the American gentrification, how they're not expatriates, they're invaders, citing the lockdowns in America that caused mass migration into their cities, as a laptop class enjoyed the cheap cost of living while collecting their American salary, raising the cost of living for Mexicans, pushing them out of the city, as they even covered this exact situation back in 2022, calling it a foreign invasion. Interesting how this was around the same time at the Mexican border coming into the US, but our media refused to refer to it as an invasion. As I don't think a single person in America would call Mexico racist for pointing out the economic issues immigration can cause. It's just interesting to see the American mainstream media try to cover these mirror image movements, as the New York Times can kinda cover this objectively, where they default back into the protest was initially peaceful, finally admitting how it turned violent, according to the Associated Press, but then reporting the groups were angry over American imperialism, as a surge of Americans helps businesses and landlords, but makes it unaffordable to locals who only average to make $370 a month. It's almost like Mexico really wishes they had a Trump, or at the very least a JD Vance.
We're done importing foreign labor. We're gonna fight for American citizens and their good jobs and their good wages.
As that's exactly what every citizen wants to hear from their leader in every country. It reminds me of all the people watching and cheering on Disney's Black Panther, where essentially T'Challa, an unelected king, uses brute force and power to push the same exact ideals as America first. And although they're not the same exact thing, it's crazy how all these people claim to hate Trump or the MAGA movement, but if you paint those same ideals on Mexico or a Marvel superhero, they're suddenly cheering it on. Because they don't despise this mentality, they've just been brainwashed to hate America. As just yesterday, we covered how the US is doing what other countries dream of. And as what appears to be the US military is now combing the streets of Los Angeles, people are noticing the typical LA traffic has basically disappeared. But here comes California's saddest sobbing senator to cry over how intimidated he is, and Governor Newsom to pledge his allegiance to the undocumented.
I want folks to know we have your back, and we'll continue to come back and do what we can to protect our diverse communities, to protect the spirit that defines the best of this city and our state, and to push back against this cruelty. That is being perpetuated by the President of the United States.
I simply can't imagine Mexico, Japan, or any first world country deporting Americans illegally staying in their country, then seeing their politicians telling their citizens, I stand with the people that didn't follow our legal system to stay here, regardless of any economic hardship it'll cause you, the tax-paying, law-abiding citizen that votes, as they desperately try to paint this as a racial issue. When the Democrats continue to lose support for minorities, Donald Trump still supports legal immigration.
Today you receive one of the most priceless gifts ever granted by human hands. You become a citizen of the United States of America. What an honor. I welcome you into our national family. No matter where you come from, you now share a home and a heritage with some of the most exceptional heroes, legends, and patriots to ever walk the face of the earth. All of the triumphs and glories of American history now belong to you.
While the left can't help but put out the most mind-numbingly dumb statements.
As far as I'm concerned, you randomly kidnapping folk and you throwing them out of the country against their civil rights, against their constitutional rights. And frankly, how would they feel if some other country decided that they were going to just start throwing people randomly in our country? Like that is absolutely insane. So yes, all I gotta say is y'all need to get these fools out of here. Yes, Congresswoman, I wouldn't like if some other country cleared out their prisons, and with the support of some other country's NGO, had them shipped to Biden's wide-open borders to immediately be granted entry, a debit card, and a free flight to a free hotel, all paid for by my tax dollar. But again, it's not like the left dislikes this train of thought. They just default to disliking whatever Trump does because of obedience to the Democrats. As why would you think critically about your own personal values when you can just parrot your NPC talking points? So if you appreciate my concise, lighthearted commentary on the tragic status that is today's reality, subscribe to Decoy Voice.